Hi everyone and happy Easter. I'm filming this message to you on Wednesday the 8th of April, but by the time you watch it, it'll be Friday the 10th of April 2020, which of course is Good Friday. And Good Friday is a really special day in the calendar year. I think that's true no matter who you are. Maybe today's a day where you normally look forward to getting away, going camping or going to the shack. Maybe you look forward to watching the Good Friday footy match. Or maybe you just love Good Friday because it marks the start of an extra long weekend where you get to spend time with family and friends. But this year, of course, things are different. This year we're living in a time of unprecedented challenge because of the coronavirus, and so many of the things that we're used to doing at Easter we can't do this year. And that brings with it a genuine measure of sadness and loss. There's no doubt about it, we're living through a really significant moment in history. And in decades to come, both us and the generations that come after us will look back and recognise that this moment in history was a time that shook the world up. It is a significant moment in history, but it pales in comparison to the most significant moment in history this world has ever known. A moment in time on which the whole history of the world turned. And that's the moment that Jesus, that great person of history, was hung on a cross to die for our sins. And what a terrible and tragic and cruel moment that was. The sinless Son of God, a man full of grace and truth and love, was hated, betrayed, falsely accused, beaten, mocked. He endured ridicule and shame. He endured a travesty of justice. He endured unspeakable physical agony, and worst of all, he endured the wrath of God, separation from his Father, unspeakable agony of the soul. It was such a bad moment that it almost seems like a distortion for us to remember it on a day that we call Good Friday. You can imagine Jesus' followers on that first Friday afternoon. They were scattered and fearful and heartbroken. Surely Jesus dying wasn't part of the plan. But of course, looking back, we know that it was all part of the plan. Speaking to Jewish crowds on the day of Pentecost, the Apostle Peter said this about Jesus. He said, "This man was handed over to you by God's deliberate plan and foreknowledge, and you, with the help of wicked men, put him to death by nailing him to the cross." The worst of all injustices, that terrible moment in history, was something that happened according to God's deliberate plan and foreknowledge. And God used that moment for good. He used that moment of the cross, according to his plan, to bring about salvation for you and me, and for billions of others throughout history who have believed. He used that moment to bring about atonement and forgiveness of sins. He used that moment to open the way up for us to come to him, receive his grace, and know him as a good and loving Father. And so this Good Friday, as we find ourselves in a tough moment in history, remember that every moment in history happens according to God's deliberate plan and foreknowledge. And remember that God uses every moment of your life for your good. The cross proves that. He who spared not his own Son, but freely gave him up, how will he not graciously give you all things? So if you belong to Jesus, as you reflect on the cross and the ultimate good that God achieved for you in that moment, bringing forgiveness and peace with him, you can also ask yourself, what other good might God be working in your life in this moment? How else might the death and life of Jesus be being worked out in your life? How might God be using this time to draw you closer to Him? How might He be using this moment to help you trust and depend on Him? How might He be using this moment in history to make you more like Jesus, the one who was nailed to the cross on that first Good Friday? And if you don't belong to Jesus, what better day than today, Good Friday, to reflect on the cross where Jesus died and what that means? It means that if you put your trust in Him, in His death on the cross for your sin, then you'll have forgiveness and peace with God. And that means that even now, in these hard days, God will be on your side. He'll be working for your good.